Okay, it's everybody's favorite time. It is tier list time. We're going to be making our first tier list for this winter patch that we've been playing on for a little while now. And I think this patch was like really impactful for the game, which is why I actually took so long to even make my first tier list to begin with. This tier list, I think, is going to be very different from ones we've seen in the past. And I think this version of the game has a lot of different opinions on where characters should be compared to previous tier lists. You know, for a long while in Strive, I feel like a lot of people were kind of on the same page about where some characters should be. And while people's opinions aren't that crazy different this patch, I think they're the most different that they have been. And I think there's a lot of arguments for a lot of characters to be in different placements. So the way I'm going to be doing this tier list for myself is the S tier is going to be the top 10 characters. These are the 10 best characters in my opinion. Because I think the game is balanced enough that we don't have like a defined like top 3 or top 5 as much as we used to in the past. Yeah, if you looked at last version, it was pretty much the Happy Chaos, Nago, Ram show. Everybody kind of knew that. I think this version's a lot better about that, so our S tier is just going to be the top 10 characters. And amongst these characters, I do think there is some character strength disparity. Like, I think the best character is a little bit better than, you know, the 6th or 7th character. So it is slightly ordered, but it's not that strict. Now, in my opinion, the number 1 character has been the same character for a very long time now, and I don't think it's changed this patch. I do still think the best character in the game is Happy Chaos. This patch didn't really do anything to him. They like, sort of nerfed him, but they also sort of didn't nerf him. They made it to where 2k and 5k don't combo into 6k anymore, but that's really all they did. And then they give him some other buffs like 6k launching higher and whatnot. I think overall he's basically the same character. In fact, it took Happy Chaos players like less than 24 hours to get used to playing him this version. That's how little they changed. I think he has been the best character in the game since he came out, and while he has changed since then, I don't think he has changed enough to ever drop him out of being the best character in the game. He obviously is just very well-rounded. He has great buttons, he has great pressure, he has all of that, right? He's just a good character, and he has a unique mechanic that to me is fundamentally flawed. I think that his mechanic breaks the concept of not just Guilty Gear, but like fighting games inherently. He has, between like the H button and steady aim, he has a move that can prevent him from being whiff punished, right? He can do whiff button into gunshot, and that can prevent you from whiff punishing him. Not just whiff prevent, but it can also like turn your whiff punish into his combo because of how the character works. He can turn literally any hit or any blocked button into a combo or pressure. He has some of the most accessible mix-ups in the game between just doing tap dust, between strong strike throw, between doing cross-up with roll. For whatever reason, roll is an insane left-right mix-up tool that he can just use whenever he wants to. He's one of the best mid-range characters, he's one of the best zoners, he's one of the best mix-up characters. He's just one of the best at everything, and he has a mechanic that I think just sets him above the rest of the cast slightly. This is a character that, like, there's so many things about him that you could say is like, this is the most offensive thing about the character. I think Clone is pretty offensive, and a lot of people think it's maybe not that good. I think the move is insanely good. Between Clone, the H button, roll, he has so many things that are just egregious about this character, right? You've heard like 6 ways to redesign Happy Chaos, that's how you know he's broke. Exactly. Like, there's so many things you could do to him, like, to make him somewhat more reasonable, but the fact that none of those things are there and he just is the way he is, I think is what makes him the best character in the game. He's very flexible. There's a lot of different ways to play the character. The list goes on why I think this character is so strong, but I do think he is the best character in the game, and I think he has been since he was put in the game. That's not really that hot of a take. I think most people agree that he's at least top 2 this version, if not just the best character in the game. The next character that we're going to talk about is a character that I feel like has not really been talked about for a while until this version came out, and that character is Mei. I think this character is broken. I think the buff she got feels so... When you look at them on paper, they don't sound that crazy. It's like, oh, they just made Dolphin have 2 frames less of recovery. How big of a deal can that be? Let me tell you, it is a massive deal. And that's not all that happened to her, obviously. There's other changes, right? When you have to think about how characters are changed, you can't just look at their own changes. You have to look at system changes, and you have to look at how their matchups have changed. For a character like Mei, some of her matchups that were hard previously, like Ram and Nago, those characters got weaker this patch. Characters that she does well against, characters like Happy Chaos and Chipp, those are characters that are a little bit more prominent this version of the game. So those types of things help the character be as high as she is. Ultimately, the thing about Mei is that her reward off of basically any interaction is insane. Her ability to just turn a counter hit 5k into a game losing situation for you, or any type of counter hit normal, is insanely good. Dolphins are so much more spammable than they were previously because now they're only -3 on block. Some characters can still RPS post block Dolphin decently well, and then some characters are just, they're just dead. You know, they don't have good options post block Dolphin anymore. And with how high May's reward is, it feels extra bad. Even for the characters who have good tools, they still run the risk of exploding, right? Because of how her reward works. And it's not just Dolphin on block. Dolphin on hit is also 0 on hit now, which is way better for her. Dolphin on counter hit gives way better combos. She has new combos where you can do counter hit S Dolphin into run up command grab, and the command grab will have less gravity than the command grab if it was just a starter. It's like a weird thing about how Guilty Gear Proration works. And it gives her insane combos off counter hit S Dolphin. Like, they look like a bug. They don't look like they should be in the game, honestly. They made H Dolphin better on block. It's +7 now on block, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You can't 6B 5K after H Dolphin anymore. H Dolphin is better on hit. There's tons of things that this change, while it seems very subtle, there's 2 frames less of recovery. It does so much for the character, and I think she was already actually really good, and just nobody really talked about it, because we don't have a lot of Mei players over here. So yeah, I think she is an incredibly good character. She has fantastic burst safe combo routes, she has good neutral, she can play patient, she can play aggressive. Her offense is like pretty basic. It's not anything like super fancy, but it is oh so effective because of how her tools work and how hard she hits when she hits you. She just doesn't really have any downsides. And I think that the way that she works, she's so rewarding that playing against the character just feels pretty bad in most situations of the match. And I think her matchup spread this version is very consistent. She probably loses slightly to 2 or 3 characters, and that's pretty much it. I think otherwise she has a couple evens, and then she just smokes everybody else. Yeah, I think Mei is like clearly top 2 in my head right now. I think she is an incredible character, and I think she's just better in tournament, especially. So I think quite highly of her right now. So the next character for me, I don't think is really that surprising for people, but I think Leo is top 3 this version. Time and time again, we see how consistent and good this character is in tournament. Some of the best players in North America play this character, obviously. He is just such a good tournament character due to having higher than average health, due to having the flash kick that he has, and just defensive options in general. His neutral is very good. His offense is very strong. I think people are getting better against this character, which is important to note. But I think that overall, he just has so many things that he has going for him as a character. His matchup spread is mostly pretty consistent. He doesn't really have, you know, it's not like last patch where he got like destroyed by Naga, right? This patch, you know, he still has some bad matchups, but I don't think he has anything that bad. And overall, he does really well against a lot of important characters as well. He's just a character who you can never count out of the match because of how his offense works and how his defensive options are. And I think the value of that and the consistency of how the character works is what cements him as such a consistent tournament character, and why I put him personally in top 3. There's been like this era of Leo players, I feel like, as of recent, where they're like trying to downplay the character and talk about like, oh well, his offense is pretty committal and stuff like that. And it is true, like his offense does have downsides to it, right? Front turn, his K buttons, while they are really good, they have commitment to them because they're not that good on block. He ends up committing himself to unfavorable situations once he's committed to his K buttons on block. Back turn has counterplay, right? Back turn is a situation where if the opponent chooses correctly, they can like mash out a back turn H or backdash out a back turn H, something like that. It's not perfect, it's not, you know, flawless or anything, but to make it out like Leo is like in a super disadvantageous situation or whatever, I think is misleading. Especially because ultimately he is a character who has above average health and amazing defense. Sure, your opponent can make a good read on defense and then put you on defense, but you're Leo Whitefang. That's Leo Whitefang, bro. I don't care what the match state is. That's Leo Whitefang, he can win. That's why I think he's up here. He's just such a good, consistent character, despite having some flaws in how his offense works. He still has probably the best dash block in the game, or at least one of the best dash blocks in the game, and dash blocking is very important in this game. So I feel like I don't really need to talk much about Leo, because, I mean, he didn't really change this patch. The game changed a bit around him, and notably the Noggle matchup got better for him. It's Leo Whitefang. We all know the deal. Now, after this point is when I think things get a little harder to place, and I think there's a lot more discussion to be had about wherever you put any of these characters. even Leo, I think you could kind of move around a little bit if you wanted to, even if I disagree. So for me, that's kind of like the top 3. I think they're slightly better than a couple of the characters we're going to talk about next. Next for me is Nago. Look, I know he got nerfed. He got nerfed this patch. He's probably one of the most nerfed characters, in fact. 2S has so much more recovery now. He actually dies, bro. You hit this character and his health bar might actually go down. That didn't happen last patch. He never died last patch. However, this character was so overtuned last patch that I think he goes from top 2 to top 4. I think that's all that happened. I think some people, like, I don't know, I think some people overblown how much he got nerfed or whatever. When you have a character that was this good last patch and he got nerfed, he still ends up being really good. He has some of the best buttons in the game still. Obviously, they nerfed 2S, but it's still very good. 5K is fantastic, 6B is fantastic, 5H is good, bar slash is really good. The way that the character works, he can just destroy you. Like 1 second, you blink and the round could be over because his reward is so consistent, his offense is so overbearing to deal with. He does chip damage on normals. He doesn't even need to hit you to be winning the game, right? He can just chip you out with his normals. I think he has some of the best neutral skips in the game, between Beyblade, between Fukio, behind clone, stuff like that. Even stuff like Far Slash is really good for getting your way in from neutral, because one block normal and he is approaching you now, right? It's Far Slash moves him forward. He has so many ways to skip neutral, and he's also really good at playing defensive in neutral. So it's like, yeah, you have to pick your poison with what you're dealing with when you're fighting Nago in neutral. While his health is lower, and it definitely is noticeably lower when he's higher on blood, he still is a high health character, right? With fantastic normals to mash out of on defense with, right? Defensively, he's so good. Neutral, he's amazing. Offense, he's amazing. His matchup spread is really good, though notably, the reason why he is a bit lower is he actually probably loses matchups this version. Characters like Axel, maybe characters like Testament, maybe even Faust, right? I think Faust beating Nago last patch was a meme. That was like some dream situation Faust players convinced themselves of. But this patch, he might actually lose to Faust. It might actually be a thing. Yeah, Jacko might beat Nago as well. So he has some matchups that are actually notably bad for him. But even his bad matchups, he can just win. He can just win. One Beyblade, one Fukio into whatever, one counter hit whatever button into guess for game type situations. He is still a one-shot character, and it works out really well for tournament to have a character who can always just win the game. Some characters, like, yeah, they might be very good, but they're not going to be as explosive. A character like Nago, it doesn't matter what the match state is. One right decision, and everything can just slip away from you very quickly when you're fighting this character. So yeah, I think he is still very, very good, and I think some people underrate him. But next, we're going to talk about Ram. Ram got a little bit worse this patch. They nerfed basically her damage. That's like what they did this patch. Between Rekka's doing less damage and being worse starters, and Rekka 3 not being a hard knockdown anymore isn't really that big of a nerf, but it does come up enough where, you know, against some matchups, not getting safe jumps at the end of your combos is kind of annoying. And getting less corner carry at the end of combos is also annoying for a character who, like, really thrives on having the corner. But at the end of the day, she's still Ramlethal Valentine, right? She has amazing neutral between being one of the fastest characters in the game for some reason. Amazing normals, amazing K normals, slash normals. Her heavy slash is still very good. Has amazing 6B, very good at jumping. She's one of the best characters in the game at jumping for some reason. Between her JK, her JP, JS, JH, J214S, J214K, like, she's just amazing in most of the states of a match. Corner pressure is basically the same as it always has been. They didn't really change anything about that. Notably, her style of pressure is a little bit weaker this patch in that they changed something about how risk works. So now, first off, you just gain more meter for blocking in general, which for characters like Ram, who like kind of just rinse repeat block strings a bunch, that's essentially a direct nerf to their style of offense. And also, when you have more risk, you build more meter. So the longer you block, the more meter you're going to build, especially when you make the correct decision on defense, assuming you do. If you get one good back throw or one good mash out or a good 6B read or something on Ram, you actually build so much more meter for being correct defensively against her now. And I think a lot of little things like that is why she dropped down a little bit on the tier list. Again, last version, she was like usually top 3. Now she's top 5 or 6. So I think she got very subtly nerfed in a couple of spots. I don't think she's really that much weaker. She's basically the same character. Due to her own changes, the system changes, and how a couple of matchups have changed, she doesn't dominate as many characters as hard as she used to. although I would still say she has a very large majority of advantageous matchups. Some matchups got more even this patch, like Ram versus Chipp is probably even this patch, where she used to beat him last version. Ram used to destroy Mei, and this patch is probably slight Ram favor, if not just straight up even. So she did change a little bit through various things that made her a little bit worse, but I still think she's obviously very strong and very well-rounded. Not that much has changed about her. Who wins against Ram? Currently, in my opinions, Ram's bad matchups are Leo and Happy Chaos. I think those are the two characters that beat her. The thing about Ram is that her changes, I think, are actually mostly fine against most of the cast. Like, you don't even really notice them. What you do notice is when you're fighting the top tiers. When you're fighting the other characters that are, like, similar in strength to her, it feels a lot worse than it does against a majority of the cast. Stuff like having to end combos in Daro instead of Rekka 3. Or the damage nerfs that she has. Those things don't feel that bad when you're fighting most of the characters, but then you fight characters in top 5 or 6, and then you start noticing some issues. All right, that's pretty much it for Ram. The next character is Chipp. This character is broken. Okay, I need the Chipp cap to stop. I just need people to recognize that this character has literally everything. He has literally everything. He has fantastic neutral. He's the fastest character in the game. He has amazing normals between 5k and 2k and 2d and far slash and 2s, whatever it is. Fantastic normals. His pressure is insanely good. He builds so much meter just for doing basic block strings over and over and over and over. He has, in my opinion, the best Rekka in the game. I think his Rekka is better than Ram's, but everybody complains about Ram's Rekka, okay? I don't know, I don't get it. Why is there not more complaints about Chipp's Rekka? His Rekka is broken, bro. It doesn't make any sense. His Rekka is so good. They buffed Rekka this patch. Rekka 3 is now faster. It's even harder to react to. I would say not feasibly reactable in most situations. It's now a real frame trap after Rekka 2. And most importantly, Rekka 1 and 2 combo into Rekka 3 on crouch. This gives him way better knockdown than he's ever gotten. And while it is crouch specific, that's good enough. Like, the fact that you cannot whiff crouching normals against this character, or you're gonna get far slash into Rekka 1, 2, 3, is insane. He's such a good character. He still uses positive bonus amongst the best in the entire game. He has some of the best defensive options in the game, between having fast normals, amazing dash block, good jump out options, has a DP, just everything. He has literally everything. He just has low life. That's it. And that does matter. Don't get me wrong. Having low life does matter in this game because you just die. Yeah, I think he is incredibly good. And like, you could honestly argue he's higher than this. You could put him over Ram or maybe even Nago, and I would not think you're that crazy for saying that. I think he is a very good character. Anyone who puts him lower than this is Omega capping. Next character on my list is another character who I think is not like public opinion. Like, I don't think a lot of people are on this page yet, but I think this character is so good and has like been coming up a little bit recently. Zato. I think this character is a problem. Okay, this character is out of control sometimes. Does she have problems? Yes, she has some issues, right? Her neutral can be unconventional and cause problems in some matchups for her in some situations. Is she kind of weak defensively sometimes? I guess. She has low health and she has the worst reversal super in the game, but she has an amazing backdash and she has an amazing 2k. So can you really say she's bad defensive? Her buttons are incredible. Her 2k and her 5k are very good. Her 2d is obnoxious. Her 5h is good. Far slash is pretty good. 6p is good. And then there's minions. Minions are so annoying to deal with. Obviously, you can just hit the minions, right? That's like, it's like the just 6p it joke, but for Jacko, it's just hit the minions. But she can hit the minions at any timing, at different trajectories, with different moves that are going to send them in different directions. And if you mess up once, if you get hit by one minion, you're put into a cutscene. You take your hands off the controller and you watch them go to town. That's all you can do. You just admire the funny little block string you're in. Her offense is some of the best in literally the entire game. Whether it's just doing endless block strings that build a crap ton of meter and do a crap ton of chip damage and jack up their risk gauge, or if you're doing actual high-low left-right mix-ups, whatever it is you want to do, the character's offense is so potent. Literally one of the best in the entire game. And it's so easy to establish in many, many matchups. Does she lose to a couple characters? Sure. A little bit, right? She probably loses to Ram. She loses to Happy Chaos. She probably loses to Mei. Other characters? She beats Nago probably. She might beat like Leo, for example. She probably beats most of the cast, in my opinion. Like, I think she is a very, very, very good character. And I think that she's a character who honestly is just going to get better. Like, she's a character who can only go up, in my opinion, in terms of people finding more tech and more ways to play matchups. She's a very open character in that regard. I also think like her damage is really high, like especially because she's a character who cranks risk gauge a lot. That inherently makes her damage higher because every time you get hit, you're gonna have like 50% risk and you're just gonna die, right? Yeah, I think Jacko is very, very strong. All right, next on this tier list for me is another character who has been kind of talk of the town lately, and everybody seems to be talking about her. Everybody seems to be playing her now. That's, of course, Bridget. I think Bridget is very, very, very good currently. She has great neutral. She has a lot of ways to play neutral, right? She can play aggressive. She can play defensive. She has good normals between like stuff like 2K and 5K are pretty good. She has good far slash. Her 2S is amazing. One of the best normals in the game, in my opinion. Her 5H is very good. She's very good in the air as well. She has a good 6B. She just has really good neutral. She has yo-yo toss, which is a very obnoxious tool to deal with. Not only is it just like a pretty good projectile, the movement options that it gives her access to makes her that much harder to deal with, because she's a character who can go from just playing, you know, kind of passive and neutral with, you know, good normals to playing like hyper mobile all of a sudden. And I think that versatility in her kit is very valuable. She has amazing set play now. This patch gave her some of the most impactful buffs of anybody out of this patch. She's one of the most buffed characters in my opinion, and she was already pretty decent before, and she's a character who I think is only going to go up because of how she functions. This patch made her set play so much more consistent, so much more threatening, and it gives her access to it more often than she did previously. And that's very important because she's not a high damage character, right? That's like one downside about this character. She doesn't do a lot of damage, but being able to have very accessible set play all the time is very valuable to compensate for the lack of damage. Not only does she have amazing neutral and very versatile neutral, she also has very good set play and just very good pressure. This character can box you in the corner so effectively just by, you know, pushing herself out, building a bunch of meter with her multi-hitting moves, and then doing yo-yo toss, and now you have to do something to get out of the corner, and if you don't do something, you're gonna block a mix-up probably. She's actually pretty similar to Ram. I think Ram and Bridget are actually kind of cut from the same cloth, but Bridget kind of exchanges like damage for having access to set play and also a DP. She has a DP, which is probably the worst DP in the game, but it is still a DP. It's not great, but it is a DP, and having a DP is always valuable no matter what, especially against some like key characters in the same, like Happy House, for example, or Jacko, stuff like that. The crazy thing about Bridget is that I honestly think they have buffed her so much that she is a very automatic character. I think she like almost kind of plays herself, where you just try to follow a flowchart for most parts of the match, but she does have the ability to play more freestyle and open-ended if you want to do that. So I always kind of value characters who can be played in many different ways and like flip switches to where like they play one way one round and they play another way in the next round, because it just makes it harder to plan for those characters and you have to be really good at adapting to fight them. I think her matchup spread is seemingly pretty good so far, right? She's a character that I think is obviously still developing. She is one of the newest characters in the game, and she got so many buffs this version that it's really hard to say how things are developing for her, but I really don't see her being any lower than where I'm putting her now. She might even go higher. We'll see. I like how I feel like we're putting three characters right next to each other that like I feel like are not what like I don't think a lot of people are on this page yet. But the next character we're going to be talking about is Giovanna. Bro, this character's broken. I am done being gaslit by Giovanna players. She is very good. Giovanna is such a well-rounded character. Does she like demolish a bunch of characters in the game? Does she have the most oppressive game plan in the game? Maybe not. She is very well rounded. She has incredible neutral. She is one of, if not the best in the game at whiff punishing. And this is a game where whiff punishing is like, it tends to be pretty difficult. She has pretty basic but very effective strike throw pressure, right? Not only is she very good at whiff punishing, she's very good at forcing you to whiff because you cannot react to her moving. Her forward dash is too fast to react to, and because of that, it's like it feeds into itself where you have to press buttons preemptively fighting this character in neutral, but she's the best at whiff punishing. So then you stop pressing buttons because you don't want to get whiff punished, but then she just runs at you and now she's in, right? She just takes her turn whenever she wants to. It is such a good loop to have as a character to force people into the situation constantly a neutral. You are guessing so hard when you play against this character in neutral. The big thing about this patch for me with this character is that the buffs they gave to her are buffs to combos. She has better combos in a number of situations now. That's really relevant because I think her main issue was inconsistent or low reward at times. That's like the one thing is she didn't really do before. Now, if you get counter hit by 5k, you explode. If you get counter hit by a number of things, you explode. If you get hit out of the air by a number of things, you explode. All because of the 2H vacuum and the 5H wall bounce changes. I think those are all very good for her. And I think just in general, how they've changed some of the characters has been good for her as well. I think she is really good. I think, you know, you could put her maybe a little bit lower and I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But I think that she is a character who, she always has options in any matchup. She, like her kit is impossible to just negate her from doing what she wants to do. Every matchup, she can kind of do what she wants to do for the most part. So I think she's very good. I think she's very well-rounded. Now, for the last character in the top 10 for me, it's going to be Baiken. Reminder that like these like 4 or 5 characters are basically the same strength. It's not really that ordered in my head. Baiken is obviously very good, and she has been since last patch even. She didn't really change this patch. I guess some matchups got a little bit better for her this version, which is important. Characters like Nago aren't as strong as they were, for example. The thing about Baiken is that she is a character who will rob you. I'm not saying she can, I am saying she will, which makes you kind of question, is it even robbing at that point? If she is guaranteed to do it, is it really robbing? It's just how she does. It's how she plays the game. She's just going to get in eventually and then do one high-low mix-up and you're gonna die. And that's it. That's just what the character does to you. Her neutral is pretty good. She does have some issues in some matchups, obviously, but she has a 9-frame far slash. It's like unwhip punishable. Her 2H can be pretty annoying. Her 2S is pretty decent. Kabari is obviously very obnoxious to deal with in neutral as well. And then, most notably, she has Air-JS, or just JS in general, which is a fantastic neutral tool. Backed up by Yozansen, which is a really good move to follow up JS with. It gives her better combos from JS. It gives her better pressure from JS. Defensively, she's fantastic. She has a 4-frame 5P that leads into a good knockdown. And she has a parry that does way too much damage and gives her Oki. So defensively, she's very hard to run your standard game plan on. Most characters, maybe not most, but a lot of characters have pressure that does not, it's not backed up by like projectiles or something. So characters that are very strike throw oriented, like Mei or Giovanna, obviously their throws can beat the parry, but their strikes won't beat the parry. So she can kind of throw a wrench in some people's game plans because of how parry works. Having a tool that stops people from just doing their game plan is very valuable. And ultimately, like, her offense is just very good. And most notably, when she has 50 meter, you are usually guessing for game because of Yuzansen. So she's like a little less consistent than some of the other characters up here, but her lows are a bit lower, but her highs are even higher. And that's kind of what I think about her as a character. She's kind of like a slot machine character where she can just rob people, but sometimes she'll struggle to get started because of how her neutral functions. Her neutral kind of requires her to take risks pretty often, but ultimately I still think she's very strong. All right, that is my top 10. These are the characters I think are the best right now. There's a couple of characters we're going to talk about in the A+ tier. There's a couple of characters that could arguably be up here even, depending on what you value. But this is my top 10. I think these are the strongest characters, and these are kind of the characters that the game revolves around in one way or another. Okay, so now we're gonna move on and talk about the A+ tier. So these are characters that are like, they're basically top 10 runner-ups. These are characters that I think, like, depending on what you value, you might put them up in top 10 anyways. All right, first character for A+ for me is something Goldlewis. Goldlewis, this patch is like, it's kind of funny that he's not in top 10 because he's still pretty broken. Like, actually, the thing about him is that because they nerfed drone this patch in a very impactful way, in my opinion, now that you can actually counterplay drone, right? It's not just a free get in. It's not like the freest Oki tool all the time, whatever. I think it notably like makes it to where he has a downside, like his downside actually matters, which is why I'm not putting him in top 10. His neutral's not like the best, but it's still pretty good. It's just not the best, right? His offense is probably top 3 in the game. His offense is incredible. If you don't have a DP, you just die to this character if he gets in. Which makes him very, he's a very feast or famine type of character because he also doesn't have very good defense. He doesn't have a good dash block. He doesn't have a good, like, fuzzy jump. 2P can be a good mash out normal, but can also be pretty bad depending on what you're trying to mash out of. So he's a character who, like, he'll win really hard, but sometimes he'll just kind of struggle to get in or get started because of how his defense works. So it makes him kind of inconsistent as a character, but in tournament, he is so threatening because if you mess up one time, and the big man knocks you down, it's over, bro, because his offense is that potent. So I think you could put him in top 10. You know, you could shuffle maybe a character around a little bit. So he just barely doesn't make top 10 in my eyes, but he is one of the serious characters to fight in the game because of how he works. I want to do something because it feels right, but I don't know if it's right. All right, I'm going to go with my gut on this one. He's kind of good. He's kind of good. I think the rainwater buff was insane. That buff goes dummy, bro. It gives him an answer to something that the character has always struggled with, which is dash block delay button. That has always been one of the most effective things against Axel because he doesn't have a kit that deals with it. Rainwater beats people doing dash block delay button, and it beats it really hard because it's also plus on block. Rainwater is something that you have to, like, you know, look out for. You have to be on the lookout for rainwater and then jump it or beat it with like a super or backdash it or something like that, right? So I think the rainwater buff is crazy. It gives him way better combos. Just in general, he actually has combos this version, which is very rewarding. Axel players have done too well for too long for me to stop recognizing that this character is actually pretty good. Does he lose some matchups? Yes, that is his biggest problem, is that he has some matchups that are just pretty bad. Like, they're pretty bad. He loses to Ram, he loses to Chipp. Probably some other characters. Probably loses to like Giovanna, right? Does he have some matchups that he does really well in though? He does well against Nago. He does well against Baiken. He does well against Bridget. He does well against Leo even. And even like Happy Chaos doesn't seem that bad for Axel, surprisingly. He does well against Goldlewis, for example. Does well against a couple other characters down here like Zato and Faust. He's a very polarizing character, obviously, right? He wins some, he loses some. But I think the important thing about Axel is he starts the game winning. He literally, not only does he have good round starts between like Far Slash and Dash 2K and stuff, but literally his game plan is to zone you. He's like the only character who, like, in 99% of matchups is hard zoning you, so he always starts the game winning for the most part. So I think he has a really good matchup spread for what it's worth, and he has some bad matchups, which I don't think any of his bad matchups are unwinnable. They're just pretty bad for him. I think he's just really good. He's got really good neutral. He's got good defensive options because of 2K. 2K is like probably the best 5-frame move in the game, to be honest. Ultimately, I think his matchup spread is what prevents him from being like a top 10 character. Like, I don't think you could really put him up there because of that. But the character is very good and very well-rounded, and I think we as a community probably have to start recognizing the Axel kind of broken, just a little bit. All right, next on this tier for me probably is going to be Zato. I think Zato is a really hard character to rank. He's a character where if you look at things like on paper, like, does he have a good matchup spread? Not really. He loses to a lot of characters, frankly. However, I think matchups, usually, I think they're what matter, right? Matchups make tier lists. That's what I usually say. But I think Zato is an exception because while he may have bad matchups and stuff, the way he functions, he just needs to hit you, right? He just needs to get started, put you in the corner, make you block Eddie, something like that, and he can just win, right? He has amazing set play, amazing pressure. He uses positive bonus incredibly well. I think he's hard to rank because of that. You know, logically, he would have to be pretty low, but also based on tournament results and how he functions, he's really good. So that's why I'm putting him here. I don't think he's like top 10 or anything, but I do think he is really good. I think Zato players downplay a little too hard. It is true, you know, Zato is not maybe the greatest character, but some Zato players be saying some things that are a little wild sometimes. So yeah, he definitely has downsides, but I think his upsides kind of make up for it in a lot of situations. He's just a very volatile character. Sometimes he just gets destroyed, and sometimes he destroys people. That's just the life you live if he plays Auto. Yeah, Sin isn't on this list, huh? I mean, it kind of matters. We now have Sin. We can put Sin on the tier list. We won't be seeing him for a while. Spoilers. I'm going to put the not hot take first. I think Testament's up here, obviously. Testament's very good, right? They're just very well-rounded character. They actually, like, they're pretty interesting from a matchup perspective. I think they have a matchup spread that's like pretty valuable based on, like, when you look at like the top 10 and you look at what characters are played in the tournament meta. I think Testament does pretty good against like Leo and Nago, for example. Like, they actually do well against a couple of important characters. I think it's almost kind of weird that we don't see more Testament players, right? Obviously, we have like Romola, who's very good, but she doesn't enter a lot of things. Kind of like, I don't want to say an underrated character, but just an underplayed character. Their neutral is pretty obnoxious to deal with. Obviously, I play Ram, so like I just kind of destroy Testament and neutral. Like I probably have a lower opinion of Testament than some people do because I play Ram. That's just something I've had to recognize. But definitely some matchups, they just really struggle to, like, the opponent struggles to deal with Testament because of how good their neutral is. Their pressure is just very, like, by the books, just good boxing pressure, right? Like, they just put you in the corner and then you're just stuck. They're just gonna loop, you know, Succubus into Crow, into more stuff, into more stuff, into more stuff. And you're just going to sit there and take all of it because trying to get out is very difficult. They do have some high-low stuff they can do as well. They're not like, they don't have anything super broken about them outside of their 6 speed. The 6 speed is the best 6 speed in the game. I will not hear otherwise. They're just a very good, well-rounded character that has a couple of matchups I think are very valuable that they do well in. They don't really get destroyed by too many characters, but they do have a couple of bad matchups, namely like Ram is pretty bad, Axel's pretty bad for Testament. A couple of matchups that can be rough, but I think they're a very good and safe character to play. And I think that they also have the benefit that I feel like a lot of people don't know the matchup, which shouldn't really matter for a tier list, but I do see a lot of people play this character and then just not seem to know what they can do against them. So yeah, I do think they're quite good. I have to think about who goes next. Are you guys ready for the take? I don't know if you guys are. All right, no, I'm going with my gut. All right, I'm sick of being oppressed on this topic, okay? I'm going to tell the truth that the world needs to hear. Some top player needs to say this so we can get the ball rolling and people can acknowledge how good this character is. Anji's broken, bro. I don't care. Okay, I said it. He's good. Stop talking like he's not good. Is he perfect? No, he's not perfect. But he's good. He is good now. He has good buttons. Not the best buttons. He has good buttons. He has good reward. He has good pressure. He has one of the most obnoxious moves in the game in spin. That move is so obnoxious. Like, spin just makes every character's neutral annoying because they can't just throw out big buttons against them because they have to worry about spin. Is spin a commitment? Sure, but they have to think about it. He has a ton of health, so he can afford to just take risks on things. Everybody talks about how, oh, you can just react to his mix-up. It's not that good. I see everybody get hit by Rin all the time. Everybody gets hit by Rin. How is it bad? Out me somebody who blocks it. Everybody gets hit by Rin. Everybody. You block those? You don't block those. You don't block mids. Don't tell me you block the overhead. Get the fuck out of here. None of you block those. None of you. I'm sick of it. The cap needs to stop. Look, obviously there's some recent results of this character. Jiro over in Japan is very good with Anji. We had recent examples of like Ooey Gooey Chewy Sticker Bar beating Umi Show at Frosty Faustings and doing pretty well in general. There's just been some recent examples of Anji players beating some pretty strong players. And I think for some reason there's this thing surrounding Anji that, like, because he was terrible on launch, which he was awful on launch, that he just isn't good ever. He's good now. He's a good character. Stop buffing him. We're gonna regret it, okay? I'm gonna regret it. I'm gonna pay for your guys' mistakes of saying he's bad. So stop saying he's bad, please. He's a good character. He's good. He's well-rounded. Pretty decent matchup spread. He's got good options in a lot of situations. He's good, okay? I feel so much better. I feel like the weight of the world just lifted off my shoulders. All right, next in A+, it's Soul Bad Guy. He's good. I really don't have profound thoughts about Soul, to be honest. I feel like he's just good. He gets downplayed a lot. He's not bad. He's good. He's got everything you need, right? Like, he's got good neutral. He's not the best neutral, but he's good neutral. He has some of the best defensive options. He has pretty good pressure, right? His pressure has some downsides, but still very good, very rewarding. This character can hit you and you just die. Does he have some bad matchups? Sure. Does he have some good matchups? Sure. Like, he's just a good character. Like, I don't know why. There's this idea with Soul where, like, I feel like if Soul isn't up here, right? If he's not up here with these people, then people think that he's down here. Like, for some reason that's like the world we live in where it's one or the other. But, like, what if he's just here? What if he's just a good, solid character with a decent matchup spread who can win the game off a very basic, simple game plan? Now, he did get nerfed this patch. They nerfed Success, and that did suck. But I still think he's actually still pretty strong. I think the system changes are mostly good for him. I think the way the game has changed has been fine for him. If you watch Mochi over in Japan, Mochi is, he's so good, dude. You watch Mochi and you're just like, yeah, this character is really good, right? Obviously, Mochi's a good player, but I think Mochi does a good job at showing how good this character still is. Is he flashy? Is he special about it? No. Does he have anything super unique to him? Not particularly. Does he have everything you need? Yes, he does. Okay, is that it for A+? I think it is. When it comes to A tier, I think people are going to look at this tier and be like, oh, these characters are all the way at the bottom. They're not good. That's not what I'm saying with these characters. I think every character in this game is pretty good right now. I think they're all pretty decent. And like, does everybody say that? Yes. That's what everybody says about every tier list that's ever been made because it makes people happy to hear it. I am genuinely saying that. I think every character is good. Right, I think every character is feasibly decent right now. Now, I'm going to go with a take that I feel like needs to be said. Similar to Anji, I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had. Millia is good, bro. She's good. I think it's true now. I think she's just a good character. I don't think she's amazing, but I think she's good. They fixed some of her biggest problems, in my opinion. They made her 2D and not you die on block, right? You actually can take your turn back. They made S-Disc not you die on block, at least in a lot of matchups. Some matchups she still gets punished for it. And I think they've done enough to her combo routing and how her pressure works that she's a good character that can do what she wants to do. Does she still blend with the game's mechanics super well? Not really. She still doesn't. She feels kind of shoehorned into the systems of the game, and it's not ideal. But I do think she is a pretty good functioning character now. And I think she can be kind of hard to fight against because she's a set play character, right? Her reward is you have to guess. And her neutral is pretty obnoxious between just having good dash speed, between 2K, far slash, annoying myriad of area options, right? Between just JS and JH, Capel, Turbo Fall, extra air movement, all of that. It's so annoying to deal with her. So I think she's pretty good. And I think some people are like living in the past with this character. In general, I feel like a lot of people are living in the past with some of these characters, and they need to like open their eyes and be like, okay, is Millia still in like the bottom 7 characters or whatever? Yes, she is, but I don't think that tells the full story anymore. Like, yes, she has weaker relative, but here's the problem. The difference with this patch and other patches, Millia last patch was weak. Nothing else. There's nothing else attached to that sentence. It's just she was weak. Now she is weak relative, which is important to note. Because is she weaker than all of them? All these characters? Sure. But she can still do what she wants to do. She can still have a functioning game plan, and she can still win consistently because of her buffs. So that's why I think about Millia now. All right, next for A tier for me, I'm gonna put Ino. I think Ino is still really good. Like, she obviously has like some pretty bad matchups, but I don't know. I feel like she just doesn't get talked about a lot because there aren't a lot of Ino players. I think Ino is a character who has strong mix-ups. They just have counterplay, right? That's like the problem with her as a character is like, Ino, unironically, is like what some Leo players are trying to say about Leo, where it's like, oh, they could do something on defense, then I die. That's actually Ino. Like, Ino can actually lose on her own offense because of how she functions, but her offense is still very good because she forces you to guess. You can't just sit there and block against her. Her neutral is not great, but I think it's still good and is very annoying. Like, you have to play against her very differently than most of the casts, which I think is valuable. She's just kind of an unconventional character, and that creates bigger problems sometimes, depending on the matchup. Like, some matchups, it's like a big issue that you're unconventional, right? Characters like Happy Chaos is like, oh, how do I even move around the screen, right? And then she does decently well against a character like Ram, because, you know, she can RPS with Ram's neutral tools. And then she fights a character like Chipp, and then Chipp just destroys her, right? She's a very volatile character in that regard because of how she functions. But I still think she's pretty good, and she's still pretty threatening. I'll put Faust next. I really don't want to. I still don't think this character is good, and I will take it to my grave that Faust is not great. But he is definitely the best he's ever been. Pretty decent now. He can function as a character, and he has a lot of matchups that he actually does pretty well in. I think that there are a lot of things about this character that people don't deal well with, personally. I think like some people don't really like address certain things about the character that well. But he does have some good buttons. Far Slash is good. 2H is pretty decent. Items can be very annoying, obviously. Like, if he gets the right items, he can just win. He does have volatility like that. I think J2K is like a good move now. I think Faust players way overuse J2K, but it is a good move now. It has a purpose. J2K comboing into mix on crouching hit into a combo is really good, actually. I think that makes him a lot better against low-hitting moves. My biggest problem with Faust really comes from the fact that obviously he's like kind of a low-health character. He just kind of dies. He has very vulnerable hurt boxes. Like, he's just a big character, so it's very easy to counter-hit him in a lot of situations. Defensively, he doesn't really have a lot going for him. He's not a super rewarding character, so like he often has to make more decisions in a match than most characters do, which is not great. Offensively, I don't think his offense is good. I know, like, obviously Afro can be pretty threatening, but I don't even think Afro is that spooky of a situation relative to how hard it is to get and how the rest of the character functions. And without Afro, his offense is just not good. The character struggles a lot against dash blocking, in my opinion. He doesn't have good special cancels. They buffed his 2D and his 5H this patch where they have more pushback, which kind of helps him with that a little bit, which is nice. Overall, he's okay now. I think, like, he's a decent, good character, you know? And then lastly for A tier, I'm gonna put Kai. Kai, I think, like, he gets weirdly overrated by people a lot. Like, some people think this character is super good. He's not bad or anything. Like, he has things you need to win, right? He just has, like, in many situations, the worst versions of a lot of those things. Or just middling versions of those things. His best things are, like, Stun Dipper is obviously an incredible move. And I think the thing about Kai is that I think his kit is made worse because he has Stun Dipper, which is a weird thing to say, but I think they purposely, because they know Stun Dipper is so good, they refuse to make the rest of him better. I don't know if I agree with that, but I can see the logic at least. But his other special moves are all pretty committal, like even 214S, Dire, whatever the hell it's called, is still -8. It's still punishable, especially if you IB it. People are pretty good at IBing these days, at least in top level play. Sun Edge just isn't a good move. It's just pretty mid, whatever. His normals are, like, good. Like, he doesn't have things that back them up. They're just good. They're not even the best. They're just good. And then the rest of his game plan just falls apart because he doesn't have things that support them very well. Yeah, I think they should nerf Stun Dipper and then buff the rest of his kit. Like, make Stun Dipper worse, finally, and then just give him other things. Stun Dipper is an insane move. It is very good, and I think it holds the rest of the character back because he has a move so good. It's stupid. He's okay. He can play a basic fighting game and be pretty decent. I think he's okay. Now, the last two characters, I'll just put them up together. I think they're both down here. I think both these characters are, again, I don't think they're, like, terrible characters, but they don't really have anything going for them, is the thing. Sin is the newest character in the game. He didn't get any buffs this patch, which is hilarious. He has a couple of good things. He has a couple of good buttons. I think his 2D is really good. I think his 2S is pretty good. I think his 6B is good. But he has so many things about him that just don't make sense. He has to spend calories to get Oki. He has to spend calories to do good frame traps. He has some good conversions, but they all cost calories, whereas some characters just get those conversions for free. He has a really good DP, actually. He has, like, probably second or third best DP in the game. Very, very good. That's about where his positive end. I don't think he really has other super great things going for him. I don't think he's far off from being good. Like, I think one patch that just gives him a couple good things, right? Namely, his far slash needs to be better. His far slash is abysmal. A couple other things, like changing how, you know, some moves that give him Oki would be really nice. Changing how his H buttons work would be nice, because he basically doesn't have H buttons. His 5H and his 2H are not very good. They're just you know? So he's playing mostly with S buttons, and one of his S buttons isn't very good because of far slash. His backdash is terrible. That is also true. His backdash is the worst one in the entire game. They should definitely buff it somehow. Make it faster, make it have more handball, something. Just make it better. This is awful. So I think he's, like, okay. He has combos and decent buttons and pressure and stuff. He has two really good supers as well. That's worth noting. Tyrant Rave and RTL are both really good. He just doesn't do anything better than other characters, and he's just kind of middling. And then last character is Potemkin. Potemkin did get some okay buffs this patch, and I think system changes were actually pretty good for him. I don't think he is by far the worst character in the game anymore, and I don't think he's, like, hopeless, but he just still has no reason to play him. He doesn't do anything super well. Obviously, his command grab is threatening, but that's literally all he has going for him. He's just a command grab character. His neutral can be decent sometimes, but any character who can play defensive against him, he's going to struggle. I don't really have any other super profound thoughts about him. He's pretty much the same character, but he's better this version, so. Anyways, that's my tier list. This is what I think about the current version of Strive. I do think this is the most balanced version of Strive that we've ever had. I don't think Strive has ever been this balanced before. I think there's a lot of characters that you can move up or down depending on your opinion, which is really nice to have compared to the last version where the game was pretty solved, and it was solved pretty quickly, I think. Ultimately, I still think this version has some room to grow as well. Some of these characters I still think are developing for sure, and a lot of matchups are developing, because when you make this many changes and this many characters are, like, as close as they are together, there's more room for matchups to develop and things that kind of fluctuate a bit. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Of course, I want to know down in the comments below, what do you guys think? Do you agree with this list? What are your own thoughts? Do you think some characters should go up or down? How do you feel about the patch? Are you happy with the patch? There are still some things I would like to see changed in the future, obviously. I think we went in the right direction finally, which is nice to see.